What's hidden holds the key. Some stories don't begin with a voice. They begin with silence and a journal in the dark. This is My Little Giant. Little stories, giant family impact. Let's uncover what James Whitmore left behind and why it still matters.
If you're reading this, I hope you still believe in planting trees you'll never see bloom. Daniel hadn't stepped foot in Bay Bridge for over a decade. It was the kind of town where time passed quietly, where neighbors remembered your business long after you tried to forget it. His father John had been the last real tie, however frayed, and that cord had snapped long ago. Their final exchange was less of conversation and more a funeral for the bond they'd once shared. Words had failed them. Silence took root. But now, John was gone. A sudden stroke. The lawyer had said over the phone, the kind that leaves no warnings and no chance to make amends. Now, Daniel was here. Not by desire, but by duty. The house, the paperwork, the memories he had boxed away long ago were now his to face. Or avoid. But something about that dusty key in that envelope felt like more than something to unlock a door. It felt like legacy calling. The Whitmore home sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, surrounded by newer, better-kept homes that seemed to mark it with fresh coats of paint. Daniel stepped out of his rental car and just stood there for a moment, looking at the house like it was a person he wasn't ready to face. Peel and paint curled like old bark, and the porch sagged with years of unspoken words. Abby had begun reclaiming one wall, wrapping around the front columns like slow-moving hands. Windows stared back at him, silent, dark, and expectant. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of aging wood and old regrets. He walked past photos still hanging crookedly in the hallway, their edges browned. Mail was stacked like a paper monument to the passage of time. He passed the study where his father once worked, its door ajar, its chair still turned slightly away from the desk, as if John might return at any moment. The attic stairs protested his weight. Each creak felt like a judgment, an accusation. At the top, the heat hit him. The air was heavier here, as if history itself were stored in the insulation. Shimmery in the golden shaft of light that spilled from that one narrow window. Cobwebs stretched between beams like ancestral flags. He approached a trunk half covered by a threadbare quilt. Before opening it, he paused at the window. Below, he spotted a figure walking along the sidewalk. A woman with auburn hair tucked beneath the scarf. For a fleeting second, he thought it was Lena. The same posture, the same pull, but she turned the corner and disappeared before he could be sure. Daniel knelt and pulled the quilt away. The trunk groaned as he opened it, hinges stiff with tar. Inside, he found layers of forgotten relics, rustic tools, ticket stubs from a long-defunct movie theater, veterans of foreign wars metal, a tattered pair of boots, and a sealed envelope labeled in faded ink, "Do not discard." Beneath these, nestled like a relic, was a journal. Its leather cover was cracked and softened by decades of handling. The spine was fragile, as though it might snap in two if opened too quickly. Etched faintly across the cover were the words, James Whitmore. Daniel hesitated. The name felt like a challenge made the Adair. He opened it slowly, cautiously. The pages whispered against each other like wind through dry leaves. Ink had bled and faded, yet the words still held weight. The first entry read, April 17th, 1943. Every dollar is a seed, not for today, but for generations. The sentence struck Daniel like an echo, not just of advice, but of accusation. What had he done with his dollars? with his chances. The diagrams that followed weren't just doodles, they were instructions. Compound interest charts, dated budgets, ledger entries for savings labeled seed fund. Terms like delayed gratification, financial maturity, and invisible income danced across the pages in a script that somehow felt urgent, even decades later. He closed the journal for a moment, his fingers tingling. This wasn't just a book, it was a blueprint, or maybe a map, and it seemed to be leading him back to something he'd never known he was missing. He reopened the journal, this time more reverently. James had filled these pages with accounts of labor and learning. Days that started before sunrise and ended long after the moon had risen. He wrote about burning his hands in the steel mill, about bartering repaired radios for sacks of flour, about building a down payment with dimes and discipline. James wrote, "Sacrifice isn't noble, it's necessary. I missed dances, not meals. Skipped vacations, not Sunday sermons. Every note today made room for tomorrow's yes." Daniel found a receipt glued to one page, a tax document from 1954. The margins held notes in his grandfather's hand, projections, future values, rent rolls. Each line was a record of resistance against scarcity. His grandfather didn't just work, he watched, tracked, reinvested. He lived beneath his means with the precision of a surgeon. Daniel's own life, overflowing with conveniences and credit, suddenly felt loud and aimless in comparison. Was this obsession, or was it something sacred? The legacy is reflection. Look close and you'll see. He looked up. A gusty mirror stood leaning against the support beam, half covered by a shawl. Daniel stepped closer. The glass was warped with age and dying. But as he leaned in, he didn't just see himself. He saw James. Same nose, same weary eyes, same line of the jaw. He reached toward a nearby box and opened it. Inside were remnants of his own childhood. Old drawings, a Boy Scout badge, a thank you card written in his hand. "Thanks for the seeds, Grandpa." A memory returned, sudden and vivid. Tomatoes, soil under his nails, James whistling softly, steady, a tune that rose like hope itself. Daniel hadn't realized he missed the man until that moment. Or maybe he missed who he had been when they were together. As he flipped another page, something tumbled out and onto the floor. A charred slip of parchment. Ink smudged but legible. "Plants here now." He picked it up, unsure it was meant for him or someone else. But something in his chest told him it didn't matter. It had arrived exactly when it needed to. And then came the silence, profound, pressing, and in it, a memory. The whistle, slow, certain, rising at the end like a question. James's signature sound imprinted on Daniel's earliest days. He wasn't there, but it was there. And so was something else, an awakening. Daniel stood slowly. In his hands, the journal no longer felt old. It felt alive, a living document, pulsing with intention. He looked to the mirror once more, and this time he saw not just resemblance, but responsibility. And in that reflection, he saw not just a man, but a mandate. This wasn't about settling an estate. It was about settling himself. He whispered aloud, "Begin again." A mirror, a memory, a mandate to begin again. As Daniel packed the journal into his satchel, a final page drifted gently to the floor. On it, printed in black letters, "The First Seed." Beneath the title, A list stood names. Some crossed out, others circled. And at the bottom, in red ink, Bay Bridge.
What if the first step to legacy is uncovering what was hidden? There's more waiting in the attic than dust and memories. This is My Little Giant. Little stories, giant family impact. Continue the journey. Episode 2 is just ahead.